sometimes we want to render different content based on certain conditions. For example, here we can add an if statement and say if items the length equals 0. Perhaps we want to show the user a different message. So here we can return a completely different markup. For example, we can add a paragraph, and here we say no item found. Now, to make sure this works, I'm going to change the constant to a variable, so we can reassign this on the next line. Okay, now back in the browser. So here we have no item found. Beautiful. But our heading is gone. So we can come back here and add our heading as well. List. And now we need to wrap this entire expression inside a fragment. So let's add a fragment. Okay. Now if I save the changes, prettier reformats our code. And here, once again, we have parentheses for spreading this code over multiple lines. With this, our heading is back. But I don't like this implementation because we have a bit of duplication. And generally speaking, duplication in code is not considered a good practice. So let me show you a different way to achieve the same result. We're going to get rid of the if statement. Instead, we're going to render things conditionally inside our JSX expression. However, inside this JSX expression, we cannot write an if statement because, as I told you earlier, here we can only use HTML elements or other React components. The only exception is braces. With braces, we can render anything dynamically. So here we can use the ternary operator in JavaScript. So we start with our condition, items.length equals 0. Then we type a question mark. If this condition is true, we're going to return a paragraph with this message. Otherwise, we're going to return null, meaning nothing will be rendered. With this, we have the same result as before, and our implementation is a little bit more concise. Now, sometimes this logic can get a little bit too complicated and it can pollute our JSX markup. In those cases, we can always extract this logic and store it in a separate variable or constant. For example, here we can declare a constant called message. Now we move this expression right here. And then we can simply render our message constant in our JSX markup. So now our JSX markup is a little bit cleaner. Now we can also move this logic inside a function. For example, we can declare a function called getMessage. And here I'm using the arrow function syntax. Now we can move this logic right here. And now we don't need this constant anymore. So here we have a function and we can call that function to get the right message. Now, the benefit of using a function in this case is that our functions can have parameters. So perhaps we can get different messages depending on different conditions. So here we can pass different arguments like 1 or whatever and get a different message. If you don't have that scenario, it's better to use a constant in this case. Now, let me revert this code back to the previous state. I'm going to move this expression right here so I can show you a more concise way to write the same code. So let's remove this function. Okay, look, this piece of code is fine and it works, but the part that bugs me a little bit is the second part, returning null here. Let me show you a better way to write this code. We start with our condition, items.length equals 0. Now, instead of using the ternary operator, instead of using a question mark, we do a logical AND between this condition and the value that we want to return if this condition is true. That is the paragraph element. Okay? With this implementation, we don't have the null keyword and our code is a little bit more concise. But how does this work? Well, let's go back to the browser and open up Chrome Developer Tools. Here in the console tab, this is going to be our JavaScript playground. If you have a Boolean value like true and perform a logical AND with another value like 1, see what happened? The result of this entire expression is equal to the second value. What if we type true and mosh? The result of the expression is mosh. Now, what if you have false and mosh? The result is false. So what does this mean? Well, that means if our condition is true, the result of this entire expression will be our paragraph element. But if the condition is false, the result of the entire expression will be false and nothing will be rendered on the screen. So this is a very common technique React developers use to render content dynamically. Okay? With this, we can remove this line, and this is our final implementation.